Imagine stepping into a pristine bank branch, where the polished marble floors reflect the soft glow of an ornate chandelier hanging high above. The air is cool, almost sterile, with the faint hum of air conditioning blending into the background. Customers in sharp suits and elegant dresses sit in plush leather chairs, their eyes darting between their phones and the sleek counters, where transactions are handled with precision. It's the kind of place that exudes wealth and exclusivity, where every detail screams privilege. But amidst this polished scene, there's someone who stands out in the worst way. A black man, around 50 years old, dressed in a faded jacket with frayed cuffs and scuffed-up shoes that look like they've seen better days. He's standing at counter number 4, holding a worn canvas bag, his posture calm, but his presence drawing curious, judgmental glances from those around him. The bank employee behind the counter, a woman named Karen in her late 30s, with neatly pinned auburn hair and a crisp navy uniform, looks up from her computer screen and immediately frowns. Her eyes narrow as she takes in the man's appearance, and her tone is icy when she speaks. "Can I help you?" she asks, but the way she says it makes it clear she doesn't really want to. The man, whose name is Daniel, nods politely, his voice deep and steady. "Yes, I'd like to withdraw some money from my account," he says, placing his bag on the counter. Karen lets out a sharp, derisive laugh, loud enough for the other customers to turn their heads. "Withdraw money?" she repeats, her voice dripping with disdain. "Look at you. Do you even have an account here? This bank is for serious clients, not people like you." You can feel the sting of her words, the unfairness of it all sinking into your chest. Daniel hasn't done anything wrong. He's just trying to access his own money. But Karen is treating him like he's some kind of imposter. The other customers start whispering, their murmurs filling the room with a low hum of judgment. A woman in a designer coat leans over to her companion, muttering, "He looks like he hasn't showered in weeks." Another man in a pinstripe suit smirks, shaking his head as if Daniel's mere presence offends him. Daniel stands there, his expression unchanged, but you can see the way his fingers tighten around the strap of his bag, a subtle sign of the frustration he's holding back. The tension escalates as Karen leans forward, her voice growing louder, more cutting. "I don't know what you're trying to pull, but if you don't leave right now, I'll have security escort you out," she snaps, pointing toward the door. "You're wasting my time and making everyone here uncomfortable." The crowd's whispers grow louder, a few people chuckling at the spectacle. Daniel looks around, his eyes meeting those of the onlookers, but he doesn't flinch. Instead, he turns back to Karen, his gaze steady, and says something that makes the room go quiet. "You'll wish you hadn't said that," he tells her, his voice low but carrying a weight that sends a shiver down your spine. Karen freezes for a moment, caught off guard by his calm confidence, but then she laughs again, this time with a nervous edge. "Wish I hadn't said that? Who do you think you are, threatening me? You're nothing but a—" She stops herself, but the unspoken word hangs heavy in the air. Daniel doesn't react to the insult. Instead, he reaches into his tattered bag and pulls out something that makes Karen's laughter die in her throat, a sleek, black credit card. The kind that's so rare, so exclusive, that only the wealthiest people in the world possess it. An unlimited black card. He places it on the counter with a deliberate slowness, his eyes never leaving. Karen stares at the card, her expression shifting from mockery to confusion. She picks it up, turning it over in her hands, her lips curling into a sneer. "This is obviously fake," she says, her voice trembling slightly. "There's no way someone like you could have a black card. You're just embarrassing yourself." She swipes the card through the machine, clearly expecting an error message to pop up, something she can use to prove her point. But when the screen lights up with the account details, her face goes pale. Her eyes widen, her mouth opens, and her hands start to shake. This can't be right, she mutters, her voice barely above a whisper. This account, it has billions of dollars? The bank erupts into a wave of gasps and murmurs. The customers who were sneering just moments ago now stare at Daniel with a mix of shock and fear. Daniel gives a small, almost imperceptible smile, his demeanor still calm but now radiating an undeniable authority. "I'd like to withdraw $5 million in cash," he says, his tone even. "And I'd like you to handle it right now." Karen stumbles back, her face drained of color, sweat beading on her forehead. She's just realized she's made the biggest mistake of her career, and it's about to cost her dearly. You can't help but feel a surge of curiosity. Who is this man? How does someone dressed in rags have access to billions of dollars? And what did he mean when he said Karen would wish she hadn't spoken to him that way? As Karen fumbles with the machine, her hands shaking so badly she can barely type, you know this story is far from over. Something big is about to happen. Something that will turn this entire situation upside down. The bank is now buzzing with a nervous energy, the kind that makes the air feel heavy and electric. Karen, still trembling, looks like she's on the verge of a breakdown as she stammers something about needing to get the manager. She disappears behind a glass door, leaving Daniel standing at the counter, his black card still sitting there, like a silent challenge. The other customers can't take their eyes off him, their whispers growing louder, more frantic. "Who is he?" someone mutters. "How does he have that kind of money?" another asks. But Daniel doesn't acknowledge them. He stands there, his hands clasped in front of him, his expression as calm as ever, as if he's been through this 100 times before. A moment later, the manager, a man in his late 40s, named Mr. Thompson, emerges from the back office. He's tall, with a neatly trimmed beard and a tailored suit that screams authority. But when he sees the black card on the counter and reads the account details on Karen's screen, his confident demeanor falters. Mr. Carter?" he says, his voice cracking slightly as he looks at Daniel. "I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. We'll process your request immediately." He turns to Karen, his eyes narrowing. "You, stay right here. We'll deal with this after." Daniel nods, his voice still steady. "I don't want to cause trouble," he says, glancing at Karen, "but I do want her to understand that no one deserves to be treated the way she treated me." Karen's eyes fill with tears, her hands clasped tightly in front of her as she tries to speak. I'm so sorry," she chokes out, her voice breaking. I didn't mean." Daniel raises a hand to stop her, his expression firm but not unkind. "Sorry isn't enough," he says. "You need to learn that judging people by their appearance is a mistake, one that can cost you more than you realize." Mr. Thompson nods quickly, his face a mix of embarrassment and urgency. "I assure you, Mr. Carter, we'll handle this appropriately. Karen will face disciplinary action for her behavior." Karen lets out a small sob, her shoulders shaking as the reality of her situation sinks in. She's just realized that she didn't just insult a random customer, she insulted Daniel Carter, a billionaire philanthropist, and one of the bank's most important clients. Daniel isn't just wealthy, he's a self-made man who started with nothing, built a global tech empire, and is known for his quiet generosity, often donating millions to causes that support the underprivileged. As the bank staff rush to prepare the $5 million in cash, Daniel turns to the crowd, his gaze sweeping over the room. "I dressed like this on purpose," he says, gesturing to his tattered clothes. "I wanted to see how people treat those they think are beneath them. I grew up with nothing, sleeping on the streets, begging for food. I know what it's like to be invisible, to be treated like you're less than human. But I'm here today to show you that appearances don't define a person. It's their character that matters. The room falls silent, the weight of his words sinking in. A few customers look down at their hands, clearly ashamed of their earlier judgments. When the money is brought out in several sleek briefcases, Daniel inspects it briefly and nods. "Thank you," he says to Mr. Thompson, then turns back to Karen. "I hope you take this as a lesson," he tells her, his voice softer now. "You have a chance to change how you see the world. Don't waste it." Karen nods, tears streaming down her face, but there's a flicker of determination in her eyes, as if she's already starting to rethink everything she thought she knew. Daniel picks up the briefcases and heads for the door, his steps measured and deliberate. As he leaves, the bank seems to let out a collective breath, but the impact of what just happened lingers in the air. Karen is led into the manager's office, her head bowed, and you can tell she's about to face serious consequences for her actions. But more than that, she's been given a chance to grow, to become a better person, if she chooses to take it. And as Daniel disappears through the glass doors, you can't help but wonder what happens next, how this moment will ripple out into the lives of everyone who witnessed it. The story of what happened at the bank spreads like wildfire, making headlines across the city. Billionaire disguises as homeless man, bank employee learns a hard lesson. Daniel Carter becomes a household name, not just for his wealth, but for the powerful message he delivered. He's invited onto a national talk show, where he shares his story with a quiet intensity that captivates the audience. "I didn't do this to humiliate anyone," he says, his voice steady. "I did it to show that we're all human, that we all deserve respect, no matter what we look like or where we come from. I've been where the lowest of the low are. I've lived it, and I'll never forget what it taught me." Karen, meanwhile, faces the fallout of her actions. After a formal review, she's suspended from her job for 3 months without pay, a decision that sends shockwaves through the bank's staff. Her reputation takes a hit, and she becomes a cautionary tale among her colleagues. Don't judge a book by its cover. You never know who you're dealing with. But Karen doesn't let this moment define her. During her suspension, she enrolls in a diversity and inclusion training program, determined to unlearn the biases that led her to treat Daniel so poorly. She also starts volunteering at a local shelter, serving meals to the homeless, and over time, she begins to see the world through a new lens. When a former coworker runs into her months later and asks if she regrets what happened, Karen smiles faintly and says, "I regret how I treated him, but I'm grateful for the lesson. It changed me." Daniel, on the other hand, uses his platform to do even more good. He donates the $5 million he withdrew that day to a foundation he created, one that provides job training and housing for the homeless. He names it Second Chances, a nod to the opportunity he gave Karen to grow from her mistake. He continues to live modestly, often dressing in simple clothes, to remind himself of his roots, and he makes it a point to visit the programs his foundation supports. Talking to the people there, listening to their stories, and offering them the kind of encouragement he once needed. The impact of Daniel's actions reaches far beyond that bank branch. His story inspires countless others to rethink their own biases, to treat people with kindness and respect regardless of appearances. Schools start using his story in their curriculums, teaching students about empathy and the dangers of prejudice. Companies implement new training programs, citing Daniel's experience as a reason to prioritize inclusivity. And in the quiet moments, when Daniel isn't in the spotlight, he reflects on his journey, from a boy with nothing to a man who has everything, but who never forgot where he came from. One evening, as the sun sets over the city, Daniel stands on the rooftop of his modest apartment building. Not a penthouse, but a simple place he's called home for years. He looks out at the skyline, the lights twinkling like stars, and thinks about the day at the bank, the day he stood up not just for himself, but for everyone who's ever been looked down on. He smiles, knowing he's made a difference, not just in his own life, but in the lives of countless others. And as you reflect on his story, you can't help but ask yourself, what would the world look like if we all treated each other with the respect Daniel fought for? If we saw people for who they are, not what they appear to be? Daniel showed us that justice isn't just about righting a wrong. It's about creating a better future. And as you turn off this video, carry his lesson with you. No one can diminish your worth unless you let them. Live with kindness, live with courage,